So back in 2003, back when Fishtown was still cheap, before all those New Yorkers moved into their hideous new Lego homes, and Northern Liberties was a landscape of ruin where pretentious young film majors like myself made pretentious experimental short film knockoffs of David Lynch's Eraserhead. Back then, one of my best friends was a Russian international student named Philip. And I had met Philip while I was studying abroad at Temple University, Japan, and he was something of a character. In a lot of ways, he embodied like every horrible American movie stereotype of Russians. He was loud and arrogant and boisterous and macho, and his dad owned a nightclub in Tokyo with total Russian mafia connections, and there was rumors that he was ex-KGB. But at the same time, he defied every horrible American movie stereotype of Russians because he was also one of the most kind-hearted, sincere, affable, and progressive people I've ever known. And in my senior year in school, he transferred from the Japan campus over to here to Philadelphia, where he moved in with a mutual friend named Milo. Now, you have to understand a few things about Milo. He grew up just outside of Erie, Pennsylvania. He was the son of a pig farmer. And he later got his master's degree from Wharton School of Business, which turned him into an asshole because that's what that school does. You have to understand, the true cost of your degree there is your soul and your humanity. He was always obsessed with money, making money, and saving money. This was the kind of guy who debated about whether or not having sex with his girlfriend was worth the price of a pack of condoms. And back then, it was his responsibility to find an apartment for him and Philip. And so in order to save money, he found a small home out at 20th and Erie. And back in 2003, 20th and Erie wasn't really one of the best areas in the city. It actually was probably one of the worst. Now, I don't want to make some horrible blanket statement that vilifies and demonizes an entire community. There's great people that live out there. There's families that live out there. And when I was out there, I got to know the neighbors, and they were wonderful. But when you drove around at night, it felt like you were on the set of a bad action movie from the 1980s. I remember passing a car on cinder blocks that was on fire. No police, no fire engine, just a random burning car. And during the summer months, you didn't hear ice cream trucks. You heard gunfire sprinkled throughout the entire night. And our very friendly neighbors would very casually talk about having to spackle in the bullet holes in their walls as a result from crossfire from a few blocks away. It was scary. And maybe right now you're thinking I still sound like an asshole. I must be exaggerating. It's not that bad. It's not like any of us were shot 5 times, right? Right? Well, one day I got a phone call from Milo. He was worried because Philip hadn't been home for a few days, and he asked me if I had seen him. And I told Milo, well, you know, Philip has friends up in New York. I'm sure he went and visited them. I'm sure he's fine. The next day, Milo gives me a phone call, and he tells me that I have to meet him at Temple Hospital immediately. There's been an emergency. In the newspaper that day, there was a short article about a Russian international student who had been shot near Temple's campus and was in critical condition at the hospital, and they were looking for help identifying him. And I thought, like, it has to be coincidence. There's no way it's Philip. But it was Philip, and it was bad. Again, the paper had left out the fact that he had been shot 5 times. 1 bullet clipped off a good chunk of his right ear. 1 bullet went clean through his left shoulder. 1 bullet hit his lower calf. 1 bullet scraped his side. And finally, the last bullet went in through his lower back, grazed against his spinal cord, and lodged in his heart. So we went to the hospital, and it was a pretty traumatic experience seeing one of your best friends laid out on a hospital bed with tubes going in everywhere. And the doctors were pretty blunt. They told us that things weren't looking good and he probably wasn't going to make it. And so there we were, crying hysterically and also horrifically embarrassed because we didn't know how to spell or pronounce his last name. I mean, there's like 3 Z's and 2 triangles. He's just Russian Philip. I don't know. But we were able to get a hold of his family and notify him, and we got word that his mother was flying in the next day to stay at that house, that awful house at 20th and Erie. So we had to go through his personal belongings, clean up the room, making sure that we threw out all of his porno mags so that his mother doesn't have to find it after he dies. Pretty weird experience. And so we went to the hospital next day. We're walking down the hallway, expecting the worst, expecting to say our final farewells, and we hear laughter. It's Philip's laughter. We get to the room, and this son of a bitch is sitting up telling nurse jokes while eating a peach with a giant shit-eating grin on his face, and the first words that came out of my mouth was, "What the hell happened?" And this is Philip's story, and excuse my horrible Russian impression. So I was riding my bicycle home from school, and these children, they stopped me on the street, and they told me to give them my bicycle, and I say, "I not give you my bicycle, it is mine, no?" So they tell me that they will fuck me up if I do not give them my bicycle. And I say, "Okay, you want my bicycle so bad, fight me and you win, you can have it." And they say, No, we'll fucking shoot you." And I say, "That's the problem with you American gangsters. You have no courage, no organization. If Russian mafia come here, we wipe you out." So I get back on my bicycle and I ride away, and they start shooting. They hit me, I don't know, a couple of times. So I ride my bicycle to a hospital, pass out, and here I am. Unbelievable. Now, as far as Philip was concerned, this was the greatest thing that ever happened to him. He was a member of this weird Buddhist cult called the Shogakukai or something like that, and his supreme leader flew out to meet with him. He was always bragging about getting shot 5 times. And the real kicker was the landlord begged him to move out because he was actually able to identify 2 of the 5 shooters. The police found 30 empty shell casings on the block. They unloaded 3 full magazine clips at him, but he refused to move out. He refused to be scared away from his home. And he would always walk around lifting up his shirt, showing everyone the scar where the doctors had to cut in and remove the bullet from his chest. And he would always say, "You know, I want to get back into politics in the motherland. And now I can say my strong Russian heart stops American bullets." And if that doesn't terrify you to be the fact that we might be at war with them, then I don't know what else will. Thank you.